I respond to this person who said they anticipate that Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche would someday face bar discipline and perhaps a criminal trial for his actions and activities. So I want to update you. This is part of my accountability series. I recently did a video for those who are concerned whether or not the people that the Trump administration have brutalized, whether or not they'd be able to have some sort of justice or have accountability. And in that video, I just go through several dozen class action lawsuits and individuals who sued the United States government because of the way Donald Trump treated them the last time, including undocumented people. They are part of class action. So you can go watch that videos on my TikTok channels, also my YouTube. Anyway, so I have some great news. While doing some research recently, this guy named Drew Ensign, you see him in the article there, he's a terrible person. He used to be a law partner. He assisted the Trump administration to gather up about 200 men for simply being Venezuelan, young, and having tattoos. None of that is indication of them belonging to a gang. Without giving the opportunity to push against it, in a Gestapo-like fashion, they picked up all these men, 70% or more of them who had no criminal background, no evidence of gang relationship anyway, and send them to El Salvador to be tortured in violation of the agreement they'd had with El Salvador, because El Salvador said, send us criminal convicts. This administration sent them innocent people with no criminal background. And they were tortured for over 100 days. They were able to do that. And they were also able to almost send a bunch of children that gathered, kids who had foster homes, kids who had been previously trafficked, who perhaps were unaccompanied minors from Honduras and Guatemalan origin. Stephen Miller concocted this plan to gather up all the kids who had they were in school, they had homework due Tuesday, they were comfortable, gathered them up in the middle of the night on September, Labor Day, and tried to ship these kids off and drop them off, and lied and said the parents want them, which was not true. It wasn't for Judge Zuckerman and a couple of other judges, including a Trump-appointed judge, to intervene and stop it.
Donald Trump's extreme immigration policies, all of it playing out in the dark of night with nothing less than the lives of hundreds of children at stake. A federal judge temporarily blocked the administration from deporting more than 600 Guatemalan children back to their home country, several of whom have even expressed fear about returning. Now, the suit was filed in the middle of the night by immigrant advocacy groups. The New York Times reports, quote, in its 25-page complaint, the National Immigration Law Center said that the children had active cases before immigration courts across the country and that their repatriation would violate the law and the Constitution. It also called the government's actions unlawful and reckless. Throughout Trump's time in politics, he has repeatedly claimed that his immigration crackdown is about going after the worst of the worst. But let me just read you the background of one of the plaintiffs in this case, a 10-year-old indigenous girl identified only by the initials LGML. She speaks a rare language. She's detained at a children's shelter in Texas. Her mother is deceased, and she suffered abuse and neglect from other caregivers. And our government was about to put her on a plane and ship her off to a completely different country.
Now, Drew Ensign was responsible for those kids almost getting deported or sent off and dumped off to another country. Why? Because when the judge asked him, is he aware of anything else was going on, he lied. He did that on multiple occasions. He lied about the knowing of the planes that sent the folks to CCOT. He routinely lied. He's a horrible person. People were tortured. When some of the people, some of those men, they eventually dumped them back in Venezuela in violation of the UN clause against refoulement, and they disappeared. We don't see them. That's why they were trying to escape Venezuela. So that's on his freaking watch. That's on his record. That's on his neck and on his back, on his conscience, on his everything. That because of him lying about knowing whether or not the Trump administration had already gathered up these men, put them in a plane, March 15th, it was all for theater, it was all for show, to ship them off, and eventually those people were tortured. Those kids were traumatized. I read the declarations of some of the children who were gathered up, and reading them sounds like reading the diary of Anne Frank. Like they said, they picked us up. We weren't quite sure. I was scared. They picked somebody else. I'm so comfortable. I don't know where I'm going. The kids, the anxiety of those children, the Drew Ensign. So for his actions of multiple lying. You read here, he said that he lied on multiple occasions. He obfuscated. He violated his duty of candor to the court on multiple occasions. Did he violate not just the duty of candor, of honesty, fairness to the other party, a supervisory? There's so many laws and ethical standards that this man violated on behalf of Donald Trump. He used to be a law partner before he came in, and immediately started the process of being the front man, the middle person, because when they're carrying out their illegal activities using old archaic laws that don't apply. By the way, the Alien Enemies Act, which is the old law that says if we're in the war with the nation, we don't necessarily need to gather up or give due process to any enemy incursions like people. That law was last used in 1812. It was used in World War I and World War II. During the Japanese bombing Pearl Harbor. We're not at war at that time. They tried to claim we're at war with Venezuela. Marco Rubio already gave up the ghost. Like when Marco Rubio had his oversight, the Senator Tammy Duckworth said, "Are we at war?" Marco Rubio said, it's like war.
Last March, the president invoked the Alien Enemies Act, a notorious wartime law last used for Japanese internment. He said that he was responding to the Maduro regime's supposed invasion or other acts of war against the United States. But in recent weeks, you, the Department of Justice, and our friends across the aisle have repeatedly said that we are not at war with Venezuela. Secretary Rubio, if that is true and we are not at war with Venezuela, will you advise the president to rescind his invocation of the Wartime Alien Enemies Act?
Well, that was a mechanism to remove people from our country that prevent grave danger. So, for example,
Marco Rubio said we had to use that in order to get these people out here. They had to lie and use an old law. Marco Rubio said that.
And I want to ask you, will you advise the president to rescind his invocation of the Wartime Alien Enemies Act?
No, of course not. I mean, these are people that are threats to the national security of the United States. But I've described this in hearings in the past, including
So you're saying that we're at war?
We are absolutely. When it comes to narco trafficking groups and criminal gangs that are targeting the United States for criminal activity,
we're in a state of war.
There's no doubt about the fact that we're confronting them in a warlike setting because they're waging.
We use this law as an excuse to get rid of these people.
We know for a fact that Tren de Aragua is a very dangerous gang. In fact, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I may have been the first member of Congress.
This is a wartime act, Mr. Secretary.
Well, are
we currently at war with Venezuela?
No, we're not in a state of war in Venezuela.
Okay, the Supreme Court has described the Alien Enemies Act.
Drew Ensign enabled that because when they were doing this, using that law, and again, by the way, this is Project 2025, Russell Vogt on a secret recording said that in between Trump 1 term and 2 terms, they were gathering around looking up evidence, looking up old laws they can use because modern laws don't allow them to do this shit. But the old laws based on last time, they don't apply, but it doesn't matter. So they use this old law. Several courts have said that law doesn't apply. The United States Supreme Court said they're entitled to give all those men due process rights. The United States Supreme Court, all of them. Amy, Brett, Neil, Samuel, Clarence, who else? John, all said, including Elena, Sonia, and Katanji, said you have to give these people due process rights, minimum. You can't not give them due process rights. You can't just accuse them of something without. If you can accuse these men, those Venezuelan young men, of just being gang members with no evidence and just send them to be prison, what's stopping a Democratic administration from saying we declare white nationalism a domestic terror problems? So we're going to go get any man who's ever declared themselves as MAGA, or if they look MAGA. If you look MAGA, we're going to pick you up, put you in a plane, and take you to the Philippines because Philippines has agreed to take our white nationalists that we determined don't belong to the country. That's what you're setting up. That's the standard you set up. You don't like that. Doesn't sound good, right? So that's what you essentially do. That's how illegal and unlawful it is. That's why the Supreme Court said you can't do that. Anyway, I digress. The point is that they were able to do this secretly because Drew Ensign allowed them. The next person do I want to see disciplined is actually, and maybe impeached, removed, is Emil Bouvet, because Ares Ravine, who was a 12-year veteran of the Department of Justice, whistleblew and said that Emil Bouvet said F the courts. This was all part of a scheme. They knew this. So Drew Ensign was aware that they didn't have the legal authority, and the judge has said, stop it. Let me first figure out, can you do this before you do this? Don't just send people out before you can do it. And the judge, Jim Boasberg, who's the chief judge of the District Court of D.C., also previously, who was the chief of the FISA court, who knows a little bit things about these folks, was like, no, you can't do that. This is like unlawful. Like, this doesn't sound right. So don't send any planes. he said that before the planes took off, and Drew Ensign lied. He violated his duty to candor. And so there's investigations. There's several different bodies. The recent one was last month in April. They filed an investigation for him. They're coming after him. And you should know also, I'm putting a scroll here of the various different lawyers that have lied for Donald Trump, that have violated their duty of candor, duty of honesty, duty of fair dealing, duty to not maliciously prosecute. All those lawyers here that you see in the scroll lost their license, were disciplined. Some of them actually were civilly held liable. Rudy Giuliani had to sell his Rolex, sell his watch for lying. So they do all these things for Donald Trump, assuming they're going to escape. So there's precedent for Todd Blanche and Pam Bondi, who I don't know, we don't know, is she dumb? Did she not know? But she, like, for example, in the Kilmer Abrego Garcia case, she went in front of TV and said, yeah, the grand juries found that he'd been smuggling for 9 years. They said he was horrible. That's not what grand juries do, babe. Grand juries just say you have enough evidence to actually start the prosecution. They don't have no findings, no final findings of facts or law, nothing like that. That's not the grand jury's job. Why are you going on TV saying the grand jury's... That is violation of so many different laws themselves. So she herself said a lot of things. This is just one of them. So she did there's a lot of lawyers lying, violating their duties up and down. Now, the ones who had to take a check, who were forced to do it, a lot of them resigned. So many of them resigned, but the lawyer who was a 15-year veteran of the Middle District of Tennessee, when they indicted Kilmer on the BS, that he was like, peace out, I'm out. People who have options were like, y'all not catching me off. Like the treasurer has to sign off on that stupid slush fund. The treasurer's like, nah, this is a temporary thing. Your administration's temporary. You're not catching me on this. I didn't sign up for this. I resign. People would rather resign than do this illegal stuff. The people who know it's illegal and keep doing it, they're going to face the same consequences of those lawyers who got disbarred, like Drew Ensign. Mahmoud Bouvet, I hope he gets impeached, because right now the Republican senators put him on the bench despite the fact that a whistleblower had already said that he said F the judges, and he purposely told his underlings to avoid the judges and not abide by their orders. He said that. Why is he a 7th Circuit Court judge? One of the first things he did when he got on his bench was violate his ethics rule by going to a Trump rally. This man, there's plenty of them in the court system. We got to get them all out. Anyway, Jay's Legal, each one teach one. It was a long explanation, but yeah. Accountability series. Look for it.